platform is powered by the Covenant Nation.
The platform.
Okay. Mr. Leke, thank you. Please to the stage. Thank you, Mr. Leke. Yes. Thank you. A round of applause for him. Okay, I think they were. Yes, please. Yes. Thank you, sir. Kunle is here, please. Sit. A round of applause for him, too. Thank you. Okay. I can see Yvonne is here already seated. Thank you, madam. Welcome. All right. So we have some questions, and I'll be directing it to each and every one of us. And I would like us to, respond as much as we can. We have about an hour, so you're going to spend so much time with me. Sitting down here is like I'm sitting down with the gods, Zeus, Apollos, and the rest of them. So you can imagine how it feels. Right. The first question, and I would ask Jumoke this question. How do you deal with a situation where you are a multitasking person or you're multi-skilled and have failed in so many businesses? Should you keep trying to build those businesses or revert to being an entrepreneur?
Oh. To be honest, I believe that it's good to have mentorship. So there must be a reason why you've failed at all these businesses, and it's good to analyze the reasons why you've failed. Interesting, I was just telling Mr. Alder, he has consulted for me at least twice in the early days, remember? So there's nothing wrong in asking for help, in asking for the way forward, and then also finding out somebody who has made it happen before, and then speaking to those people. So when you failed multiple times, it's not those businesses that are failing. There's something fundamental that you are doing that is making these things fail. So if you cannot analyze these things yourself, you may need help for someone to analyze for you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have a question for Yvonne. And then the question is a two-part question, so you might want to take down. You have successfully navigated the corporate world into becoming a techpreneur and investor. For corporate professionals seeking to transit into entrepreneurship or seeking to invest in credible startups, can you give some useful tips that worked for you?
Okay.
That's it. Yes.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Thank you. The biggest thing for me is that when you're in a corporate organization, you build a lot of domain knowledge. What that means is that the industry that you're in, whether it's financial services, whether it's oil and gas, you learn about the industry, you learn about, how it works, right? And that's always very helpful because when you get into a startup environment, you're more flexible. A lot of the team that you have may not have that domain knowledge, so you have to, and you are probably the only source of that, and you have to pour that into them. So your ability to be able to teach them is a function of how much you've learned. The other thing too that's very helpful with a corporate environment, and we never pay attention to it when we're in the corporate, is that the easiest way to say it is that you see how things work. When you see how structure and process works, right? Even when you go to be a startup in the early days, and you're not at that level of scale with that structure or whatnot, because you've seen the way it works, right? You have that vision in mind, right? And so those are the things that really, really help me. And I think the last thing as well is flexibility. With the startup environment, there's a lot of iterations, right? You have an idea, and there's a lot of iterations in terms of execution. So you have to be able to be flexible to get to that point of success.
Thank you. And she's saying flexibility is key, to dealing with this situation. Thank you so much. I have another question, and then this question goes to Mr. Leke Alda. Thank you. For all panelists, can you share, but I know the person said panelists, but this goes to you. Can you share one major lesson you learned from a mistake in your journey and how you've utilized the lessons to scale up your business?
Well, the most powerful thing that I've learned in business is something called integrity. Whether integrity in terms of handling money for your clients or integrity in terms of your staffing. I remember we were given a job by a major bank about 20 years ago. The contract sum was about 650 million or so. And we were supposed to spend out of the money to do part of the work. And when we finished the work, there was 50 million naira left. So we wrote to the bank that they have 50 million naira left. And they had never seen such a thing because 50 million naira left. And then they said, okay, show us the 50 million, send it to us by check. And I wrote a check to them and I sent it to them. They were shocked. But integrity also means that if you promise your staff that you will do X, Y, Z for them, you must do those things. It also means, on the other hand, that if you promise a staff that if you do this, you're going to get punished for it, integrity also says you must punish the person. So integrity, to me, is a credit facility. It makes people want to give you things because they know you will come through and you're not going to give excuses. If there's nothing I've learned in business, it's the word integrity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've heard flexibility and we've heard integrity on all fronts. Now the next question goes to Mr. Charles Otudo. This is a straightforward question. Straight. It says, what are the practical steps to being innovative? What are the practical steps to being innovative?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think it starts with the self. I strongly believe that if you want to be creative, you must understand the rudiments of being creative. Who are you trying to create for? So it starts with you understanding self, and then understanding your environment, understanding by extension, the environment is also your client. Now, if you don't understand what your competition is creating and what will make sense or be competitive, you are working for yourself. There is something about creativity and innovation. Most creative people create for themselves because they are part of that creative process. They forget that they're not creating for themselves, but they're creating for a third party. So they take it very personal. And I keep telling my creatives, you are not creating for yourself. So most creative people are very, very, very finicky and selfish and protective of their creativity. So when you criticize it, they take offense, they take it personal. So first step is remove yourself from what you're creating because you're not creating for yourself. And then to be innovative, you must understand that you cannot create from a vacuum. You are creating, you can't create from a void either. So what are you trying to create? To be innovative, you must understand the environment and then tap into what I call the mu. The mu is, for me, works from a point of view where you understand that creativity does not come from self. God was number one creative, the most creative person before the earth was formed. He created everything. So if you do not tap into that, you are creating an isolation of the Almighty. And it starts with understanding that you have to tap into a being that is the ultimate. Now, how do you become innovative? Understanding that the market is also evolving and everything you create must be evolving. So if you create something fantastic yesterday, it's totally irrelevant the next day. Systems change, people change, ideas are also evolving. So it's the ability to understand that it's not about you and your creativity, but it's about the audience, and then also tapping from a source that is higher than you and understanding that creativity must consistently evolve. That way you remain innovative. That for me it's the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that is being innovative, and we have flexibility, we have integrity on all fronts again. And then the next question goes to Mr. Inyi. Still related to funding, financial institutions are regulated by CBN, and they require collateral before granting loans. How do I get access to funding from investors and non-financial institutions? I guess this person heard you say you didn't have any collateral to drop.
I haven't had the honor of raising money from a financial institution just yet. So I'm not sure that my experience is particularly relevant in that respect. So you'll permit me to answer what I know. I think the first thing about raising capital, particularly from investors, is to have a very clear vision of what is possible and how big whatever it is that you're building can be. I think that's what's at the heart of it. With the businesses that I was a part of, what we put in front of investors was not anything about profit, but it was about the impact that would become possible if we could do X or Y. In the case of Andela, we were selling investors on the impact that would become possible if we can create a world where opportunity was as equally distributed as talent. And investors were very, very bought into that world, because that would mean it was a more equal, more just world. But more importantly, they would also get talent. And then we were able to walk back from that big vision, the steps of how we would do it, including building a platform that would train hundreds of thousands of young people, selecting a few of them to work with global technology companies, earning from those global technology companies. And exactly as we laid it out is what happened over the last couple years. Andela currently generates hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue as a result of that big vision. So I would say anyone who's looking for funding, if your first focus is on looking for funding rather than trying to identify what impact what you're building will have, you almost always will fail. I mean, for us particularly at the fund, we write checks of between $25,000 to $500,000, and never ever do I consider collateral. This is money we write off, quite frankly. But what is most important to us is how are you answering the question of turning one of Africa's challenges into global business opportunities. If that's not the vantage point you're coming from, we really don't care to listen to what you have to say.
Excellent. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. The next question goes to Audrey. And it says here, if, still related to funding anyway, and then he says, okay, let me get that question right. Okay, still to Audrey, yes. We have heard about the importance of service and sacrifice. How do I navigate the capital requirement in the pursuit of my entrepreneurial ideas?
Can you hear me? All right, excellent question. I'm going to start by adding to what he said, because I've been through several exercises in capital raising, bringing in venture capital and DFI funding into my business. So what I want to say is that for entrepreneurs, the process of raising capital starts before you get to the point that you need capital. And that's why we're having this conversation about a global outlook. It's about how you structure your business. It's about documentation. It's about clarity about what the business is set out to do in the first place. So any conversation with financiers, you need to have your documentation in place. You must have your compliance metrics fully ticked off. So if you haven't been paying your taxes, if you don't have all the right licenses and permits that surround that operational and regulatory space for your business, you end up shooting yourself in the foot. So that's the thing, to first always think about, at whatever point you are in your business, keep that bigger picture in view, that one day you will need to get to where you can showcase your business to a potential investor. So why don't you just start now? And it ties in with what Yvonne said about from the beginning. What are you doing? I remember in those days, if I went to Shell or Elf or Mobil and I saw how they processed a kind of document, I would just watch quietly. Now go back to my little office and tell my secretary with her little typewriter, yes, Leke, we did have complete with the red and blue ribbons and all that, right? So I'll tell her, they did it like this, they did it like this, and we would just replicate at our own level that process. It's about the mindset of best practices. So that's one, before you get there. Secondly is that you must necessarily do a bit of an analysis as to who are the funding institutions, whether it's venture or PE or some kind of DFI that operates within your sector and at the level of funding that you require. So for some people, their minimum ticket size is $50 million. Some is $100 million. And if you're looking for 5 or 2, it can be discouraging, but there are those who actually work with the smaller businesses. And over the last few years, we've seen many of those come to the fore as people begin to look more from an Afro-capitalism point of view. There are also a lot of angel investment networks who are coming up. So you have to educate yourself about what is there and know where you should focus your effort. The third thing around fundraising is you, the entrepreneur yourself. So most people who provide funding to businesses, after you've done all your nice technical, commercial, DD presentations and all that, will tell you that they invested in you because they can see your passion, they can see your understanding of the business, they can see that you connect with a picture that is bigger than yourself and that you're willing to go the journey for that kind of result. So it really, literally, it's a lot of things coming together. But if you're waiting for when you need it, then you would have missed that boat in the first place. Now, the question was around how to finance your entrepreneurial activity. Well, here's the truth. Everybody by now should know the concept of bootstrapping. I don't think there's anyone on this side of the hall who has not gone through this whole bootstrapping process. And that's thinking through how you leverage your family, your friends, your personal resources to then be able to finance the way that you start or run your business. But there are also collaborations that help. So for instance, I remember that back in the day, we didn't have money. We raised our own out of the little businesses we had been doing. And when it came to delivering, just go all out. Just put quality on the table so that you're sure of a repeat order and you're sure also of references. But what we would do then is at some point, we'll go to suppliers and say, listen, I have this order from X company. I don't have the money, right? But we structure something whereby even if it means you pay more for you to get some kind of credit terms that are not easily available to the next person. And you make sure, however, your own part in the process is that you do everything possible to make sure you go back and make the payments as quickly as possible. You build credibility. Credibility is like, somebody said it, I can't remember, one of the speakers said it. It's like your integrity, your credibility, that goodwill out there is better than cash in many, many cases, right? So you have to be able to think about such things. There's so many opportunities, even with the banks and financial institutions, whether it's invoice discounting, or there's so many ways you can literally, create both cash and non-cash leverage for yourself to move the business forward. And I did talk about partnerships and alliances. I really want to encourage this. There is so much that can happen, but many of us are trying to go it on our own. So I hear you ask, so where do I find the other entrepreneurs? You find them in places like this. You find them in the different networks and conferences and organizations and NGOs and things who are centered around your business, your industry. You don't find them by just staying back by yourself and thinking it's just me. You'll be amazed who you have access to just by putting yourself continuously out there. And in collaborating, you might be bringing the business, someone else is bringing the money. Find something that works for you to get over that hurdle. And I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for her again. Kule, this question is for you. And it says, how do you overcome the fear of the unknown when starting a business with an amazing vision, but from a low background advantage?
So, I'm not a fan of vision, I think that a lot of vision, I think vision as a concept is big and widely accepted, but I don't think it's a precursor to meaning or creating growth or anything. There are so many people I know in history, in the Bible, in my contemporary times, who did not have the privilege of a vision, but moved whichever way. Abraham, for example, didn't have a vision, so to say. He was going to a land that was going to be shown, right? But so I believe that there is a dream and a resolve within you that just qualifies you for a better experience. And a lot of navigation around the fear of the unknown is usually lack of clarity. When we know better, we do better. And a lot of momentum is defined by understanding, right? And so you find people who travel maybe to the United States, for example, and maybe they are already public figures in Nigeria, maybe they are comedians or actors, and they just get to the US and just pick up a new skill and start working maybe as a nurse or something and completely move away from all that has brought them, respect, honor, dignity, and probably money or influence, right? Then you go close to those people and realize that even when they had all of those things when they were in Nigeria, they never had a dream. They never had a compelling resolve within them to take a stake under the sun and superimpose, their intention on the world, regardless of what is on ground. As a person of faith, I believe that you have to mature to a place where you lose the fear of whether God will take care of you or not. And that is where true freedom begins, right? There's a concept I call adventure capital. The idea that possibilities are existential, and that if you have by whatever providence has given you the capacity to believe in those possibilities, the unknown becomes a ladder for you. I've had to navigate different, journeys of my life where I didn't have clarity about where I was going, but I knew about where I was not going. And I tell people every time, it's not every time you have to know what you are up to, or what God is up to, or what you are doing. But you should know, in the least, at any point in time, what God cannot be up to. You should know what you can't be up to. And that is enough to give you a movement, right? And at the end of the day, you just keep going, right? So a lot of times, even when you are not clear about the action you should take, you may begin with clarity about the action you should not take. You are permitted by life and providence not to have the clarity about what next every time. But you will not be forgiven by life if you lose the clarity about what you should not do, right? Because what you should not do is created by history. What you should do is created by the future. And cluelessness about what is ahead is permissible, but missing the lessons of what you have to do now, right? That is not permissible. And that comes from being clear about what you should not do, right? So I've married, I've believed in the future. There's nobody in this room that can really give us the mathematics that they will see tomorrow, right? There's nobody in this room. And this room is filled with dreamers. People are betting on the next 5 years. People are creating dreams, documenting business plans. Yet they have no math that shows that they will be alive tonight by the end of today. But they are making those dreams anyway. People are getting married, giving birth to children. They cannot prove that they'll be alive to father that child in 15 years. But that didn't stop them from not giving birth. So that sense of adventure is pretty much existential. We do it every day. To be taught to be more conscious and to bring method to that belief is what I think is critical, right? As opposed to, just thinking you are chancing it. The whole of life is adventure on its own. So if you enjoy the ride, you put failure in perspective to know that there is no way you are going to succeed if you're not going to perfect how to fail, right? And to know that except a corn of wheat fall to the ground and die, it cannot abide. So there's just a glory that is trapped in your frailty as a human being and accepting the composition of the human condition itself, which is finding your highest success through your imperfections, right? That neutralizes all fear in front of you and gives you a sense of mission and thoroughness that takes you to the next step and the next one and the next one. That's what I think.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for him. You know, when he opens his mouth, words of wisdom come forth. And then he's saying that irrespective of the background where you come from, living beyond the fear of the unknown is what you should do and become adventurous. This question goes to Mrs. Audrey Jo Ezigbo. Again, this is a serious question. How did you arrive at starting a business with your husband? The idea itself. What are the nuggets for couples that may be able to aspire to, bring their husbands into their business? What do you advise?
Okay, thank you for that. I love when I get asked that question. So first and foremost, as a teenager, I caught the vision to start a business. I actually, some of you have heard my story, the woman of substance story. That was my personal encounter with the vision of being able to build something big. And I held that for all my years throughout school. But then I met my husband and I fell in love. Aww. So in the place of, I always say, in the place of Anya love, rose-colored glasses, we made a decision because you pointed out at that point in time, banks were coming in, right? I was doing my first MBA then in Enugu. Banks were the new banks, the modern banks with the flashy cars. And so we decided, since I was doing an MBA in banking and finance, that I should get a job in one of those banks. And I went in for one of the interviews, the last stage of an interview. But as I sat there, I asked myself, how does this look like the dream you've held, the vision you've had for your life? And I got up and I walked out. So when he came back, we were having the conversation, and I said, listen, I'm not going to do this because I don't want tomorrow to feel that I gave up my dream because of you, whereas I've held it for how long? So he said, of course, let's move forward. What do you want to do? And we started talking about that. And at some point I said to him, because he was teaching, but he was also doing small contracts here and there, and I said, why don't we just do this together? And it made absolute sense. So we started to discuss the business name, what will we do, where will we start from, and so on and so forth. So it really was, in our case, it just happened as a matter of course. And it happened also because there was a man who was not threatened by his wife's vision and chose to partner with it. So I know he's watching live, so I hail him for that any day, any time. So that's how we started. But what kind of tips would I give? Let me say, first of all, I hope I can do this free advertising for myself, that I actually run a platform called the Double Impact Platform, and it's a training platform for couples that work together. Because I've written a book about this called Double Impact, and then I've been doing this platform for 6 years, because I figure that as God gave me the vision, you can't, with your spouse, build a highly successful business and lose your marriage, lose your home, lose your relationship. That doesn't add up. So it's trying to help couples to build a successful business and still have a great family life. So in essence, if you are interested, please reach out to me on social media. We'll make the connection. But one of the key tips I would put on the table is this. If you work with your spouse, you need to depersonalize that relationship. And remember that this is not husband and wife matter. If you are running a business, you must be running a professionally run institution. That means that each person is constantly asking the question, if this was not my husband, if this was not my wife, what can I do? What can I say? Where are the boundaries? It's very important to do that, right? Because otherwise you'll be carrying your quarrels from the house into the office and vice versa. And that's not good for running your business professionally. You also have to think about how your staff see that dynamic. Of course, they want to see that you're friends, you have a good relationship, but they don't want to see your pettiness, right? They don't want to see all those things. They don't want to see you over hugging and kissing. They're not interested in that. So you focus on professionalism. It's very key, even for your customers as well. It's also important that you carefully delineate what your work roles are. who is responsible for what? And this is not about job titles. It's about the structure and systems that we talked about as being imperatives for global businesses, right? So if you situate yourselves in that, who is responsible for what? What's the reporting structure? What kind of governance frameworks do you put in place to make sure that the business is not an extension of your home? Right? So there's a lot of things. Of course, you have to then, as well as looking at the business, and I'm just doing very high level, but as well as looking at the business, you also then come back to your relationship and begin to ask yourself, how do we protect this space? Because you don't want a situation where, because you work with your spouse, all you discuss every day is gas and pipelines. No, it doesn't work like that. In fact, my husband knows now, for the way it is, you bring a file home and you ask a question, sometimes I don't respond, then he'll ask again, and then I'll say, what will change between today and tomorrow morning if I don't respond to you right now? And that is a signal for, can we move on to talking to ourselves? So as much as you protect the professionalism of your business by putting structure and all that in place, you also want to protect your relationship so that you don't lose out on either front. So I'll anchor it there, but to say, please reach out to me on Instagram if you're interested, if you work with your spouse or you want to work with your spouse. Happy to put you on the community. We're always sharing real life experiences that can help our couples do life and work better together, because it's not easy terrain. Business is not easy. Marriage is not easy. When you put them together.
Thank you. A round of applause for her. Thank you. So basically, having partners who are not threatened by our ideas. And secondly, we have to depersonalize the relationship when it comes to business. And thirdly, we have to work together to keep the home front. All right, Professor Jumoke Adenowo. All right, this question is for you. How has the role of having a mentor or mentors influenced your career growth and successes today? And what critical things do you seek to impact in the life of those you mentor?
Okay. If I may, I'd like to start with a question on creativity, because I'm a creative. So I'd like to add a little thing to that. There are a lot of creatives in Nigeria, a lot of comedians, actors, actresses, poets, speakers. But I'm not too sure that we maximize our creativity, because the innovation that we're talking about, if I'm to speak to creatives here, I would say the beginning of creativity is even before you get any client. It is the way a creative looks at life. A creative looks at life with childlike wonder. At every point, you're always learning, always imbibing new experiences. The most innovative things in life the solutions come from cross-pollination. So it's bringing something from maybe nature into, say, aerodynamics. So you look at the way a bumblebee flies, for instance, and you bring that one into aerodynamics. So to be really, really creative, there's really nothing new under the sun, but you must be able to learn from one area and apply it to another. The creativity never stops. When it now comes to mentorship for Jumoke Adenowo, I had to say, at a high-level dinner with a diplomat very recently, when some ladies were positing to mentor, I said, my generation, the 50-somethings right now in Nigeria, the ones you know as maybe strong women, didn't have mentorship. I can say it anywhere boldly. The people at the table were a bit uncomfortable, and I said, there are 3 outstanding architects in Africa, by the grace of God. Myself, Francis Kerry, David Ajayi, 2 men and myself. I cannot boast of more than 3 female clients. What I did not add is, and the 2 of you are not one of the 3. So it is not a lack of competence or anything, but you didn't patronize an outstanding female client, architect in Nigeria, and we know what it is. So a lot of us, and then I was with one of my clients, and the next day she said, it's true, that generation basically were queen bees. I'm sorry I'm this blunt, this is who I am. That generation were queen bees. Yes, there's a generation like mine who mentor those who are coming. I learned from where I could learn. I said, for instance, there was a time I was talking to Mr. Alder of Alder Consulting. I don't even think he charged me. and we discussed things. He put me through, made me see things in a different way. Since then, I've been interested in brands. I do brand environment. I did a slew for Access Bank. It's because of the way my thinking started. So for some of us, you may not get the mentor you need, but you can have access to books. You can live locally and learn globally. That's what it means. You can learn from all over the world and from the thinking that comes from all over the world. But how do I mentor my own mentees? Very closely, with a lot of intimacy, a lot of hand-holding. They know I'm with them every step of the way, which is why I don't take on many mentees. I'm with them with every step of the way, because especially with women, most times a woman is loaded, powerful, strong. She just needs someone who can tell her, you can make it. You can do it. Look inwards. Why don't you look at this? Okay, come with me. Let's go to the DFI and see maybe whatever. Write the proposal this way. Women have a lot more going for them. It's just that we have a society where we are not, acculturized to reach for a lot. So, of course, I tell the story about in Harvard Business School how they wrote a case study about a woman and about a man. They called the man Harry, described him how he was, a goal-getter and all that. And they said, what do you think about him? They praised Harry. The same set of attributes they gave to another person. I said, but her name is Harriet now. She's a woman. What do you think of her? Words like the B words were coming out. Words of she's too ambitious, she's vicious, she's hostile. So there's a type that is expected of a woman. And what I do with my mentees is tell them it is okay to shine. It is okay to be strong. You don't need to dim your light for anybody. You can be all that you are created to be. You have one life to live. Express. In fact, there's so many other people who are waiting for you to succeed so that they too can be given permission to shine. You owe your generation the expression and the solution that you carry. You must deliver that solution. And guess what? I'm here for you 24/7. For me, it's very personal.
Thank you. Thank you. I want you to expatiate more on another question that is almost similar to what you just responded to. But this person is asking about having a mentor if he or she is introverted, and if gender plays a role in deciding who your mentor should be.
Gender can play a role depending on which sphere of mentorship. Mentorship is broken into different dimensions, so to say. You could have a coach who mentors you professionally. You could have a mentor, like, for instance, for your marriage. So there are different spheres of mentorship. So you want to analyze yourself enough to know, what do I need mentorship for? For what season of my life do I need mentorship? So how long is this mentorship going to be? Do I think it's lifelong? Do I think it's just because of this business venture? So gender can play a role. But if it's you've delineated what it is that you want mentorship for, and you're two mature adults, I think actually if your marriage is not in trouble, you can actually be mentored by any gender. That's what I believe. So it depends on what role. I mixed the second part of the question.
Yes, that's the second part of the first
one.
Okay. So
yes, and if your mentor, if you're an introvert,
yes.
It does not. I don't even think it has anything to do with your character, your introversion, or your being an extrovert. It is you identifying what your need is and going after the person. Let me be very crystal clear about this. In your mentor, you want to look at someone who looks like the picture of the future that you want. In one word, follow who know road. That's all. Because I see a lot of people being mentored by those who have not achieved what they want to achieve. Are you kidding me? Let the person have achieved what you want to achieve. They may be rough. They may not speak the way you want them to speak. But you should be mature enough to know the value you want to extract from them. And then let the rest go. Do you know, if we're going to go Bible-based now, faith-based, since we're in Covenant Nation, that Saul was a mentor for David. He did everything wrong. So why did God send David to Saul? To show him what not to do. Number one. Number two, to learn palace protocol, because he was a shepherd boy. So he took aside what didn't work and took the things that worked. So if you're an introvert or not, write down what you need. Go after the person who needs it. The Yoruba people have a saying, "Ento majo oyinu akpata ki nwenu ake," which means if you are going to get into the honey that is within the rock, you don't look at the axe. That means you just put aside what is disturbing you and go after that value. In one word, you can insult me, I will refuse to be offended. Until I get what I want from you, I'm not letting you go. After that, you can go.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for her again. So this question goes to Mr. Leke Elder. Following from the activities you did during your presentation, can you give an example or two of a good business description of what one does?
Didn't get the question.
So it says, following from the activities during your presentation, can you give an example or two of a good business description of what one can do?
So can you hear me? Okay. It's a bit confusing, that question. So it's okay. And that's already what I was trying to illustrate during the business session. If you can't ask a question that I can understand, how am I going to answer the question? You know?
Okay, the way you came forward and people reviewed, and you reviewed their cards. So people came forward and you reviewed their cards and the others. Can you give people an example, other examples?
You got to learn the fundamentals of branding. What we were dealing with there was visual identity design. That is not branding. You understand? Branding is much more, it's much bigger. It involves HR, it involves culture, it involves value, it involves strategy, it involves vision, mission, all those things. When you have defined all those things, you want to make sure that those things can relate to each other, they have relational integrity. That's branding. So when I look at your business card and you are working against yourself, the colors are wrong, there are colors that don't work. There are colors that are anti the business that you are describing. For example, I will understand if there are primary colors from somebody running a primary school. But if you are running a medical system, an hospital, and your colors are bright yellow and this, colors matter. Colors speak to us. Have you ever seen a lawyer in red? Have you ever seen an undertaker wearing very colorful clothes? They're always in black because we associate colors with emotions and with things. Black stands for something, navy blue stands for something, purple stands for something. You just can't sit on a computer and just, I like yellow, let me add yellow, and all those things. It doesn't work that way. This thing is a science. You are being programmed. We've been buying blue Omo. My father's generation bought it, my generation bought it, my children's generation, and it's remained new blue Omo. How can it be? Somebody is programming you. How does somebody convince you to take citric acid, water, flavor, and say that it's fantastic? All they did was that they put a picture of Messi beside Pepsi. Messi, Pepsi, So when you look at the two, you're not seeing caffeinated water or carbonated water. You are looking at a guy who is so skillful. They programmed you. That's what I do. Therefore, when you are dealing with clientele, you have to look at the psychological profile of the client, because there's a fundamental assumption in economics, and this is basic economics, that the richest people buy the most expensive things, and it's not true. In fact, most of the time, the poorest people buy the most expensive things. So you do psychological profiling. This is my client. How does he think? Where does he go? What does he like? What does he buy? What does he wear? By the time you profile all that, a picture begins to emerge, and you know what to tell him in order to get him to buy the material. Let me give you an example. I spoke about the communications company I got a retainer for. I was just having fun. So in those days, there was nothing called, your phones didn't vibrate. You had to buy a vibrator. I'm sorry for the terminology, but you had to buy that, okay? And they didn't know how to sell those things. So I put out an advert and said, all hell broke loose when Jennifer called. You know, of course, what I was trying to say was that if this one had had a vibrator on his phone, the phone wouldn't have rung very high, and then the wife wouldn't be suspicious of the phone call and everything. All he needed was a vibrator and everything. And the next day, this company, everybody was calling that company and asking, I want to speak to Jennifer, because there was actually a Jennifer in the company. I want to speak to Jennifer. I want to speak to Jennifer. Jennifer. And they were buying phones. That company went from 0 to 100 million in 6 months. In fact, it was the money that scattered the company. Because the money was now too much. Everybody was eating breakfast at Sheraton. My retainer went from 400,000 to 1 million the next year because I delivered. So one of the things you need to learn to do is psychological profiling, a system from economic profiling, where you do A, B, C. The people in Mushi don't buy Swatch. You know, the people in Ajegunle, it's not true. There are products that are aspirational. You know, and you aspire to buy those things. And you see that sometimes the poorest people are the people that are wearing Air Jordan, $500 sneakers. So those are the kind of things that you need to look at, and we can go on and on and on. Maybe one day I'll face real branding at the platform. Maybe one day.
Round of applause for him again. Thank you. Okay, so this question goes to Mr. Charles Otudo. And he says, sir, when your output is a service, how do you package it to become a product that a client appropriates? When your output is a service, how do you package it to become a product that a client appropriates?
I think
English.
the first step is to differentiate from the entrepreneurial point of view or the initiator. Are you into service or are you into product? You can't be both. Are you selling a service or are you selling a product? If you can differentiate the two, the approach will be different. Now, if you're selling a product, the approach will be different. If you are selling a service, it's different. A product is tangible. A service is not tangible. A service, you can't see it, you can only feel it. So like Mr. Ada was talking about just now, there are also processes. So if you want to sell a service, it's intangible. So they feel the impact based on your process. It's one-on-one or online or whatever, but it's the output that differentiates, that makes a difference. Your processes from this point to where the client feels the impact. But if it's a product is tangible. So for instance, if you want to have what I call the brand extension, from a service you decide to now create something else, that's a different process. So you cannot, I don't think you can convert a service to a product without going through a process. It's a bit tedious, and that's not for this kind of platform. You can't convert a product and make it a service to become a product and sell it like that. There's a process. So there are two different things. You have to differentiate. Is it a service or a product? Because a service is intangible while a product is tangible. So the end point will also determine based on the output. So there are two different things. That's my point of view.
Thank you so much. We've come to the end of the panel session. A round of applause for all the speakers here. Thank you so much. It was an amazing time with you. A round of applause. Please, can we stand up on our feet and give them a huge round of applause? Thank you. Please, can we come?
Live local. Think